Hey everyone, fantastic interview with Shawn Getty on this episode. I did want to jump on real quick and let you know that we do use some profanity and we don't bleep that out. So if you're listening with kids in the car, whatever it looks like, you might want to save this episode for a later time. But all in all, it was a fantastic interview, so I hope you enjoy it. Welcome back to another episode of After the License, the podcast where we help real estate agents build their business. Excited to have on Shawn Getty. Shawn, what's going on, man? How you doing today?
Yeah, good, man. How you doing?
Doing fantastic. It's starting to get chilly here in Arizona, but nothing like what I'm sure you deal with. So
We're frozen, man.
I'm frozen at like 55 degrees. So you'd love it up here. So
Oh yeah. No, we're like minus 14, 15 today, I think.
oh
So
boy, I
yeah.
can't even comprehend what that's like. So why
Oh,
don't we
buddy.
start off by telling people where you're from, and then kind of like how you got in the real estate business, and we'll just kind of start from there.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, so from Calgary, Canada, so way up north. And yeah, I started real estate a little over 2.5 years ago now. And yeah, it was kind of one of those things I wanted to do when I was 20 and started doing the course, made it to like the third chapter, talked myself out of it, like where I'm going to get customers, who's going to trust a 20-year-old kid, all that kind of stuff, right? And then I just never continued with the license. I gave up. And then, fast forward 15 odd years, I was in new home sales, so new construction. And that's like talk about that for an hour, but ended up getting fired from that field. And just one of the things that I was most frustrated about is I was stuck in that community. I was never allowed to take customers around or anywhere else. So I found real estate that I could go anywhere and talk to anybody about anything. So that's kind of like what led me down that path, if that makes
I
sense.
love that. No, absolutely. So you got started 2.5 years ago.
Yeah.
What was that like? Like, what was that initial entry into the business? Did you, were you on a team? Did you join a brokerage? Did you have a mentor? Like, what did that look like for you as a brand new agent?
Yeah. So the climate in Calgary when I got licensed was horrible. So it was we were in the back end of our recession. So in 2014. So just for anybody who doesn't know much about Calgary, we're kind of like Texas, where we're heavy in oil and farmland. And our federal government decided to stop selling oil in 2014. So imagine what would happen in Texas if they stopped selling oil. That was us. So we were on a 7-year decline. And I joined in 2019, which was kind of at the tail end of that decline. And if you can imagine this, their average days on market was 3 years for a house. So you would put a house up and it would take around 3 years to sell it. It was so often that you go on a buying tour and you pull up all the houses and they'd be off and on market for 3 years, right? 2, 3 years all the time. Super normal. So it was like a very difficult time to start in real estate here. Most people were down 20, 30, 35%. So like their deposits were gone. They were cashing out life savings, everything like that to sell a house. It was a lot of more sad times, a lot of divorce and all that kind of stuff. So that was when I started. And I started at EXP, was the first brokerage I've been at. And I didn't want to join a team. I looked at teams and I actually just kind of thought they were dirty for the most part, right? It was like one person that didn't want to work very hard. They founded a lead gen system and they were just going to make everybody else do all the work for them is kind of what was in my mind for teams. So I stayed away from that. And actually, my beginning was horrible. I So I was assigned a mentor, right? I don't know if you remember the mentor program, right?
Yep.
You pay like 20 or 20, 10 or 20, I think it's 20% commission you had to pay back then to the mentor. And so I sat down with them and there's only one available at the time because EXP was super small when I started. There was like less than 100 agents here. So I sat down and we're talking. I'm like, okay, like, listen, I'm brand new. I'm dead broke. Like most people starting, we're like, I have no money whatsoever. Missing my mortgage payments, parking down the street because I'm thinking my truck is going to get repoed. And I'm like, listen, like I need to sell a house today. So like whatever you tell me to do, I'm literally going to get up from this table and I'm going to go do it. So like, what do I got to do? I started in March, right? And yeah, so what they told me to do was to do a pumpkin drive. I'm like, okay, in March or in like October. And they're like, yeah, no, like, you should get your name out in the neighborhood and the community and start building your like a reputation in an area. So you should go to and hand out pumpkins. I'm like, that's October. And I go, and like, where am I going to get these magically free pumpkins from? I ain't got no fucking money. Right. I'm like, this is horrible. So I'm like, that's not going to work for me. So next idea, please. The next thing they said was you should go and sit at coffee shops and talk to people coming and going out of coffee shops in the neighborhoods you want to work. I'm like, I don't think you fully understand broke. I'm like, I can't buy a coffee. So they're not going to let me sit there and loiter, right? Like that's not going to
Yeah.
happen. Talking to people coming and going from coffee, like, how is that a good place to prospect? Like they get to your number one and number two advice. I go, I don't even want your number three. I'm good. Thank you so much. I'm leaving. So I left. I talked to the broker and I'm like, listen, I'm not doing the mentor thing. And they're like, well, you have to, you have no choice, right? Like it's the way that we're structured. I'm like, okay, cool. I quit. He's like, what? I'm like, I'm not paying this person to give me like the worst advice on the planet. Like that just, I'm not doing that. Like, I'll go find another broker. I'm good. And he's like, okay, fine. Then you're on your own, right? You get no help, no support. Like, good luck to you. I'm like, I'd rather. So thank you. So then that, and then I went into EXP world, right? Because I got the 60 hours of training or whatever. So I log in and I'm not a video game person whatsoever. So like right off the bat, I'm like, I already don't like this. We never had the metaverse back then, so it wasn't cool like it is now. But
Right.
so I log in and, there's that little information desk at the front, right? So I log in and I'm like, hey, I'm brand new. I know there's a lot of training here. So where do I go to sell houses? And they're like, oh, you're brand new. Welcome, bud. So much fun here. You should take the boat for a ride. Like, boat? I'm like, I don't want to take a fucking boat for. I haven't eaten in 2 days. Like, where do I go to learn how to fucking sell houses? So then I promptly logged out of EXP World and never logged in. So now I had like no brokerage to go to, no mentor, and then no training. So I started off like horrible. I started just YouTubing and Googling things to try to figure out how to sell houses, right? So
Yep.
yeah, that was my start.
Well, it's funny you mentioned that though, right? It's like I think that's where a lot of agents end up, and it's not the same story, and it's different brokerages and different teams. But at the end of the day, I think it's like most agents, and it's unfortunate. It's like you get started in the business, you're going to have to figure out what is going to work for you and what's going to work for your business. You know what I mean? And so fast forward now, 2.5 years, you've built a successful business. Like, what would you say? Like, what are your lead generating methods now that have worked for you and have ultimately kind of helped you build your business that you have today?
Yeah, totally. So yeah, like first year in the business, a little over 40 deals. Second year, I did 103 deals. And then this year, we should be a little over 200 now with the team, right? So, yeah, definitely good production for sure.
Yep.
Yeah, basically, what I've learned is prospecting is the business. So, like, I call it employment. But I say the only time that you're employed is when you're actively talking to new buyers and sellers. That's the only time. So if you think back, when I'm talking to agents, I'm like, think back about yesterday. And if the only time you're employed is when you're literally talking or DMing to potential buyers and sellers, I go, how much did you work yesterday? Like, well, I didn't, no work. I'm like, okay, what about last week? Maybe 15 minutes. I'm like, okay, so you were employed for 15 minutes and you want to make 100 or 300 or $500,000 a year, but you were literally employed for 15 minutes, right? All the other stuff in my mind is not employment. It's a benefit of your employment. So listing presentations, buyer tours, CMAs, stats, all that stuff, that's all a benefit or busy work. None of that is employment. Only prospecting is employment, if that makes sense, right?
Yeah, 1,000%.
Yeah, so my prospecting methods, the main one, social media, 100%. So once you figure out social media, it is the best tool that we have in our toolbox, hands down. The other main ones that we do is just door knocking and warm calls. That's it. No paid ads, no lead gen, none of that. Literally just learning how to grow your social media sphere. So that's number one. When I started real estate, I had about 260 followers on Instagram, and I'm almost 4,500 now. And it's all organic, and it's all exactly the people that I want on there. They're people that are just like me, and they've been building the know, like, and trust factor. And whenever they're ready to do business, they just send me a DM. So I know now how to build my audience and train my audience that they're the ones that they want to work with me. So social media, number one, door knocking, and then sphere calls and open houses when we were allowed to do open houses. But that's always kind of here or there. Yeah.
Yeah. So that first year you said, I think you did 40 deals.
44, yeah.
Was a lot of those like door knocking and open houses and sphere stuff while you were building up that brand on social media, or what did that balance look like?
Yeah, so I could tell you like my first few deals, and then it just kind of snowballed into the rest. But yeah, so my first deal was from warm calls. So I got my first listing 4 days in. It was $1.35 million. And our average sale at the time was 450. So we're talking, 3 times the average sale, which is pretty amazing, right?
Yeah.
These guys in the market's $1 million. That's like a $3 million sale. So first listing was $1.35 million. I got fired from it, so I didn't sell it. So I got that from a warm call, and then I set up an open house for it, and I wanted to get traction on the open house. So I went door knocking, and I door knocked a little over 300 doors for that open house. And it's in an estate community a little bit out of town. So you wouldn't expect a lot of traffic. And again, our market was shit. It wasn't like it was today where you could put an open house sign up and 1,000 people show up. You were sitting like 1 to 3 people per open. It was kind of normal, right? If somebody showed up at all.
Yeah.
So I went door knocking, and our door knocking script got developed a lot from that day, to be honest, or those days that I went, but it developed a little bit better over time. But I was just inviting the neighbors in for an open house. And people are like, why would you invite the neighbors, right? I'm like, well, because I want to sell their houses too. And I want to introduce myself to them. So we would always just like I would knock on the door, and I'd be like, hey, don't worry, I'm not here to sell you anything. My name's Shawn. I don't have any knives, water machines, or Bibles. We just have an open house down the road, and we're just inviting all the neighbors in to come check it out. And the people look at you all weird, like, dummy, I live in the neighborhood. Like, I'm not moving. I'm like, okay, perfect. I know you're not moving, right? So then I just take a quick peek in the house. I'm like, oh, it looks like you have a beautiful house too, right? So obviously you don't want to move, but this is your chance to pick your neighbors. So if you have any friends, family, or coworkers that you want to live close by, bring them on in. This is an awesome house at a great price, and we'd love for you to pick your neighbors, right? And they're like, oh, yeah, I guess so. That is kind of cool. Or if there's any neighbors you hate, let me know, and I'll make sure I knock their door twice. Maybe I get them to sell. They go laugh, haha, right? And then I'd be like, okay, perfect. I go, how long you lived here for? Oh, we've been here for 4 years or 6 years or whatever it's been. I'd be like, okay, cool, right? Like, what brought you to this community? Why are you here? And I'm just digging for pain points, right? So why are you here? And they're like, oh, we moved you for the school, or we moved you for this, or whatever it was. And I just ask simple questions like, do you still like the commute? Do you still like this? Does it still work for you for that school or whatever it was? And if they start saying no, I'm like, okay, you know what? These people probably do want to move, right? They moved here for a certain reason, and that reason has probably changed. So then I just start qualifying deeper and deeper in there, and I just usually try to push for a listing presentation. But if I don't get it, that's totally okay, because I'm going to knock the door again later. So yeah, so as I run the open house, and then when I did my first open house, this was my first interaction with the Tom Ferry group, which was absolutely horrible. But I was trying to download an open house sheet for people to sign in, which I don't recommend anybody uses open house sheets anymore, or any e-sign-ins. None of that stuff works as good as actually just booking appointments, if we can get to that. But I try to find a sign-in sheet, and we'll dig into that part later at the Tom Ferry story. But so anyways, I had a little over 30 people show up to this open house in a state community, which is amazing, right?
Yeah, you talked about normally it was like 1 to 3.
On a normal house, not in a state house.
Yeah.
In a state house, like, people aren't shopping for those, right? So yeah, we had a little over 30 people. So we had an amazing open house. Things were really good. I registered a bunch of buyers. None of them ended up turning out. But from that door knocking, I picked up 2 more listings later on. So I sold 2 more houses from that listing. And then the social media part of it, this is one of our best social media strategies. We call it a slingshot, but I couldn't run ads, one, because I didn't have money for it. And even though I had like maybe $10 room on my credit card, try to run like a $2 ad. I didn't know at the time that you had to have a business account on Facebook, and you had to link your business account and your Instagram in order to run boosted posts, right? So I'm like, fuck, I need to get this. I need to get this exposed to more people. I can't run ads. I go like, I'm just going to lean on my sphere and get them to do it. So I would post at the open house, and then I would put it to my story. And then everybody that I saw my story, I would send them a DM, and it'd be like, hey, you don't have to do this if you don't want to, but I'm trying to get as much exposure as I possibly can to this listing or to this open house or whatever it was. I go, could you do me a huge favor and just share it? And that led to the slingshot script that we have now, which is a little bit different from there. But I would have like 40 or 50 people share it, right? Because I would DM fucking everybody. Then from those DMs, now I'm being exposed to all their spheres. So I'm getting like awesome growth and everything, which is amazing. And then I would start conversations with those people in the DMs. And then that was me working my sphere, like warm calls, but it was warm DMs. And then I'd pull out a couple more deals from there too. And then all of a sudden I'm like, oh man, like all I have to do is talk to people, right? The more people I can talk to. And then so what happens is now I'm getting thousands of views for my listing or open house, whatever it is. I'm having hundreds of conversations in the DMs. And then now I'm posting value and everything. We're getting business for door knocking, and then we're getting more buyers for open houses. And then that just escalated to the business that we have today. Like it's super simple if you think about it. So that's why like in my head, I'm like, you don't really need to buy leads and stuff. I know a lot of people do, and a lot of teams run that way, but I'm like, if you just do these simple things, you have business that's sitting in front of you.
Yeah. How much, I mean, so you kind of figured out these things along the way, right? And I kind of think that's like your secret to success, and you figured it out really early, which is like, you just have to go and you have to try stuff, and you have to kind of taste and adjust, and like, but you have to essentially just go get after it, right? Like how much, like, do you feel like your success just comes down to that? Is like, okay, I'm going to do this. I'm going to figure it out. I don't give a shit what people think about me, right? And I'm just going to do it, right? Like, do you feel like that has played a big part in kind of where you're at today, or is there something I'm missing?
No, it's 100%. Yeah. So like what happened again, like I had no mentor, I had no brokerage, I had no training, I had no nothing, right? So I just turned to YouTube and Google, and even the stuff that I saw on YouTube and Google, I didn't like it, right? I'm like, man, like this just seems so corny and so fake and so like salesy, right? Like call your friends, ask if there's anything you can help to do with real estate. I'm like, if I haven't talked to somebody in 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, then I'm calling them out of the blue. No, right? I'm not doing that.
Yeah.
Right. Or like the open house, like virtually every open house that I seen, I hated it. I hated it on YouTube. I'm like, it's so aggressive. It's so shady. It's so stupid, not customer service based. I'm like, I don't like any of these open houses. Like mine, my goal, obviously, number one goal is to sell the house if I can, but we all know it's about a 1% chance of selling the house that you're sitting in. 99% aren't going to be interested in that house. So if I know that 99% of the time people aren't going to be interested in the house, I don't even want them to go inside. If I could stop them at the front door and I don't even let them inside, I did a perfect job. And if the house does fit what they're looking for, then I give them a personalized tour and I sell the house, right? And I can break that down after I answer your question. You're like, how we do that? But yeah, so I hated everything that I seen, but I seen the things I was supposed to be doing, right? And again, I was broke, right? Like I was working the door at a bar, 7:30, 8 o'clock at night till 3 a.m. so that I could get paid cash, so that I could maybe buy gas or food, right? Like I had no money, so I had no choice but to do the things. So again, everything I saw, I'm like, I don't like this, but I understand that these are the things that I have to do. So let me just start doing these things, and I'll develop my own way as we go. So like even the warm calls, like I remember making my first warm call. I just started at A. I clicked A and I just dialed the number that was on there. And I had no fucking clue what I was even going to say in the other phone. I had nothing written down in front of me or anything. I'm like, I'm just going to talk to this person. Hello? Hey, is this whatever? I can't remember. It was like, is this Adam? Yeah. Hey, it's Shawn, man. What's happening? Shawn? Yeah, remember Shawn Getty from years ago? Oh shit, Shawn. I'm like, hey man, what are you up to? I'm like, nothing. What are you up to? Man, I'm also fucking nothing. Right. And I'd be like, you part of the divorce club yet? Like, what's going on? And like, I would just like literally just start talking to people. Right. And then the conversations led to our warm call script, which is super effective. But yeah, so like that's just started doing it. Same thing with knocking doors. I had no idea what I was going to knock on the door for. I just started doing it. Social media, I had no clue. And I was being very open about my process and about my thoughts and my feelings at the time. I was almost using it as like a venting outlet. And yeah, so as I was doing that, people, like my own family, but people were like, what are you, a realtor or are you a therapist? I'm like, man, just fucking leave me alone. Like I'm just talking to people, and then people are talking to me back about this. So this is fine for me, right?
Yeah. So
yeah, I would say the biggest thing for everybody is just to do, right? Like stop learning, stop reading books, all this. We'll segue into this in a second. But like I was talking to someone, they're like, oh, I read 18 books this year. I'm like, you read 18 books? That's a lot of books, right? Like, no, some people read 52. Like, it's a lot of books. I'm like, okay, tell me about the last one, right? And there's like starting to talk about it and like some of the principles inside the book. I'm like, okay, cool. I'm like, okay, so what did you implement? Like, what did you change in your schedule or your this or like whatever part of, sorry, I got a puppy here and I think he's trying to chew cords. I'm like, so what did you implement, right? Like, what did you change? And they're like, oh, well, I haven't changed anything. I'm like, so what was the point of reading the book? Right. So like I find like throughout the year, all you really should be doing, like if you think about if you boil it down, all you should be doing is just learning new skills and mastering those skills so that you can add them to your business. So let's say you do read a book of whatever it is you want to read, like let's say Facebook marketing, right? Don't read a book on Facebook marketing. Learn everything there is to know and do about Facebook marketing so that you can be an expert at it and actually add it to your business, right?
Yeah.
So not like, well, I read like a book on the miracle morning. I'm like, okay, well, you doing it, right? Or did you read maybe 4 books in the morning so that you can really attack the morning, right? So yeah, I got segued there. I don't know if I answered your question.
No, you absolutely did. You absolutely did. I think the biggest struggle, and my internet is giving me a little, so hopefully you can hear me okay. I think the biggest struggle most new agents have is just that action piece, right? It's and almost to your story, right? They kind of come in and they join a brokerage or they join a team and they expect someone to give them the exact, hey, here's a buyer, go out and show the house. And when that's not the case, right? And they've got to go figure it out themselves. They kind of have a deer in the headlights look, right? And a lot of people are like, well, I need to figure out, I need to learn more. I need to be an expert at the market. I need to be an expert at the sales process. I need to be an expert at this before they can actually go out and do those things. And it's actually the opposite, like you said, where you just have to go and take action. And you learn along the way. You learn with clients. You learn as you do the marketing thing. And that's ultimately, I think, when you become even more experienced at it and become an expert is because you've put yourself in a situation where you almost had to figure it out. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And I'll speak to that for a second, because this is something I started implementing a little bit like fairly recently. Because so many people on my team, new agents, like on the team, and they're like, oh, I'm just not comfortable about speaking about this because I don't know enough. And I don't want to talk to people about that because I don't know enough. Or I'm afraid to go on showings because I don't know enough, or whatever it is. Right.
Yeah.
So like maybe I was just too stupid to have that fear, or too desperate. I'm not sure. But like I truly had no choice. I'm like, I got to go do these things. Right. And I didn't have anybody to help me. I just had to do it. And these people have me helping them and they're still not doing it. I'm like, what's the main holdup, right? And I think you kind of said about the education piece. So I'm like, okay, like how can I help them with the education piece? Because I give sales meetings every morning. I train people every day. We have breakout sessions on whatever it is that we're going, like all the time we're doing training, right? And people still aren't catching it. I'm like, okay, they don't understand it deep enough so that they're comfortable to portray it to their audience and stuff, right? So how do we fix this? So what happened is I started giving them like the top of the funnel, let's say, or the top of the piece that they need to learn. So let's say we're talking about like the BRRRR method. We went over was a really good one. I don't know if you know the BRRRR, right? To buy, rent, buy, reno, rent, refinance, redo, right? To grow your door count. So I taught them all the BRRRR. And I'm like, okay, perfect. You guys know this now. So make a post about it. And a lot of them still want to make a post. And I'm like, well, I taught you. We talked about it for like an hour and a half, right? I'm like, okay, they don't understand it deep enough. So what you guys need to do is now you have to write a blog, because if you write a blog, you have to formulate your thoughts in a very concise way so that you can portray it to people. And then if you can do that, then you'll be able to understand enough of it to actually be able to talk about it and post about it. I'm like, okay, perfect. So then when they did the blog, they did the BRRRR. I'm like, no, don't do a BRRRR blog, do a B blog. Like break it down that much. I want a whole blog just on the buy piece. Then I want a whole blog just on the rent piece, right? Or the renovate, right? The renovation piece. So now what happens is they're getting a deep understanding of everything. And when they're posting what I'm talking about, they're like, I actually understand this, right? So but I'm like, people come in thinking they're just going to get spoon-fed everything. And you have to go off on your own and still learn to a deeper level. But I would say, like, anytime you get a question, like this is for new agents, or even not even new agents, people just do the business. If you get a question on something and you don't know what the answer is, don't just look up the answer. Write a blog about it, or write even a course about it so that you understand it so deep that you could teach it. And then that's how you move your business forward as an expert. If that makes sense.
I love that. No, that absolutely does. And I think they say, like, if you can teach something, right, and you have to, your brain essentially forces itself to kind of learn it and understand it so where you can articulate it, right? And I I love that, right? It's kind of taking action and taking it a step further. One thing I always tell agents is, they always talk about, well, I don't know if about the market or the neighborhood. It's like, okay, then go out and actually preview homes, right? Like that's something is always an aha for, I think, brand new agents. Is like, you don't have to have a buyer to go look at vacant homes. You can go and schedule the tour and go walk them and see what they're the priced at and see what renovations they have, right? And you can start to form your own opinions about those homes. You don't need a client. And I think that's almost the other piece of it is new agents, they want to be solidified in what they know, but they don't actually have any clients yet, right? And so it's kind of this weird back and forth when it's like you just need to start taking action and start doing some of this stuff, learning about these topics, learning about the market, and then the clients will come naturally because you're doing those things. You know what I mean? And the confidence will come too,
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And that's the thing, is just start doing. That's the biggest thing that I see is just people just don't do. And they just get debilitated by inaction and fear. And it's like what can we put in place? Because I see these YouTubes and podcasts all the time. People are like don't let fear stop you, and don't this, and just take action. And I'm like, man, this is so useless, right? Like nobody sits down to actually think about like the actual step someone needs to take. They just talk at high level. Like nobody wants to talk about the road. They just want to talk about the destination. And that's stuff like, don't let fear stop you. Don't let, okay, that's not helpful. Like that's not helpful. We all know not to, like, that's basic shit. Yeah. What can I physically do right now? Like tell me what to do with my hand and what to do with my eyes. Like what should I physically be doing to start moving in that direction, right? And that's where kind of like that blog thing came from.
Yeah, right? I love that. I love that. So you said something about open houses earlier that I'm intrigued. So you mentioned not even letting people in the open house if they weren't qualified or if they weren't interested in that type of house. Can you talk through that a little bit?
Yeah, for sure. So what happens is you have to understand the whole big picture, right? So hold on, let's choose. No. Yeah, sorry about that. Yeah, I'm already down one computer charger.
All good.
Yeah. So if you think about open houses from a macro level, not micro, so macro, in a community, let's say, like whatever, like what's a community that you would work in?
It's the Scottsdale area.
Scottsdale.
Old Town Scottsdale. Yep.
Let's go even tighter, like a community name.
Okay, so we've got Optima Camel View is like a good complex out here in Scottsdale.
Optimal Camel View?
Yeah, it's called Optima Camel View, exactly.
Okay. So at any given time, and there's like mixed product there, right? Houses, townhouses, all that stuff, right?
Yep.
At any given time, how many open houses would there be on a weekend?
I would say just a couple, maybe 2 or 3.
Okay. So not too many then in a community.
Yeah.
So I find usually there's like maybe like 5 on the minimum, but like 8 to 10 is pretty normal for a community to have open houses, right? Like let's say it's a single family house.
Yep.
So now if you have 8 to 10 people running an open house, what do most agents do at an open house?
They just let everyone come in. They put some signs out and maybe bake some cookies and call it a day. Maybe a Facebook Live every once in a while. That's about it.
Yeah. And so the 2 things that I always think about anytime I'm doing prospecting is what's the intent and how do I max out the ROI? And then the ROI is return on investment, and you're only ever investing in 1 of 2 things, your time or your money. That's it, right? So what's the intent of the activity I'm doing? Pick up new buyers. How do I max out the return of the buyers that I'm coming in for? Okay, so I have to make sure I develop something that's different and unique. So when I think about open houses, most people have their sign-in sheet, right? And most of the scripts that you see online are something along the lines of due to safety reasons, due to whatever reasons, due to blah, whatever bullshit thing you have to say that it, whatever it's true or not, my seller requires you to sign in, right? Sign in on the iPad. I'm fucking high tech. Sign on the pen and paper. I'm old school, whatever. Either way, it's the same bullshit. Sign in, right?
Yeah.
What are the odds that's a real name and number?
It feels like 0, maybe 5 or 10%, right? Yeah.
Even let's say 10%, 1 in 10. Okay. So let's just say let's say it's 5%, let's say it's 50%, right? That same customer who is probably naive and new, are they going to put if someone's giving their real name and number, are they going to put it at all the houses? I would say, yeah.
Probably, yeah. Yeah.
Right? I would say, yeah, if they're the type of person. And if they're in a community looking at a certain type of house and you're just going to fucking blast them with a bunch of listings, are they going to get 10 sets or 5 sets of the exact same listings?
Yeah, because they've signed in now at 5 or 6 different places. Yep.
Right? So unless you were the cutest agent on that fucking tour that they went on, you ain't getting them, right? You better be cute. I ain't that cute. I'm only 300 pounds. That ain't going to work for me, right?
Yeah.
So I'm like, this is stupid. I'm not interested in just getting into the blind lotto of throwing out the emails, right? Of the list that everyone's sending the same list. No point.
Yeah.
So what I do is I'm looking for pain points and current dissatisfaction in everything that I do. Because if I can find the pain points and the dissatisfaction, I can be the solution. Does that make sense? Right?
Yeah.
So now what happens, if you think about somebody moving, is moving fun? Like the physical process of moving?
I hate moving personally. Yeah.
I fucking hate it, dude. You're a psychopath if you love it. You're completely insane. I'm sorry if you're a mover and you're watching this, but you are nuts if you enjoy moving, right? So now if you think about this, in order to go through the process of moving, the cost, the time, the fights, the energy, the buying your friend's pizza, all this bullshit, your pain has to be pretty high in order to go through that, to pick up your entire life and move it somewhere. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So
yeah.
What happens is we have to understand that people are obviously in pain and we're looking to provide the solution. Okay. So when people come in, that's what I'm looking for. So I always like to start with an icebreaker, right? Like, hey guys, how's the weather? How's this? You see the game last night, whatever, blah, blah, blah. And my entire goal is by the kitchen at the latest. If I can do this at the front door, I will. By the kitchen at the latest, I'm looking to be what we call coffee worthy. So would this person invite me out to coffee, right? So I'm just going to keep asking questions, as many as I can. What's your favorite color? Like, I'm just going to keep asking questions until I hit something that they're interested in, and then we're going to have a conversation about that. I'm going to let them do most of the talking. That's another problem with salespeople is you guys fucking talk too much. You need to listen a lot more, right? That's how I'm serious, right?
1,000%.
Yeah. Like if you're talking, you're losing. You should be listening. So I'm just listening for pain points and I'm digging for pain points. And then to get coffee worthy, and how you know that you're coffee worthy is their body language will change. So their arms will go from crossed to uncrossed. They'll go from leaning out to leaning in. You'll see their shoulders slouch or whatever. Like they'll just be more relaxed. You can physically see it happen. You're like, perfect. I'm now coffee worthy. And then I'm going to ask them 1 to 2 questions, right? Depending on how personal that they got. But the question is going to be, the more personal one is always a what question, because what enlists a long form response, right? So what in your life changed that your current house doesn't work for you anymore? Does that make sense? So something in their life changed, right? They added a kid, they took away a kid, they got married, they got divorced, their job changed, this, whatever. Something in their life changed because they bought that house or they rented that house, whatever it was. At some point, that house was perfect. Does that make sense?
Yep.
It was enough for them to move into. Now life changed. Now they got to go, right? Hold on, this guy's going crazy. Every time he goes crazy, you have to hold him like that. Sorry, guys.
If you're listening on the podcast, we got a YouTube video of the puppy here. It's great.
Yeah. You got to hold him until he calms down a little. Okay. Okay, go there. Where's your toy? There you go. So what in your life changed that your current house doesn't work anymore? It's pretty personal, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes you go that way. The one you're going to use more often is what about your current house doesn't work anymore? Way less personal, right?
Yeah, because they say, it doesn't have a big enough garage, or they can kind of make up something there. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So what about your current house doesn't work anymore? And then you have to dig deeper, right? At least 3-4 levels deep, because you ain't going to get the real goods until you start going, right? So what about your current house doesn't change? So here's a really good one, for example. Oh, my house is too small. Okay. So instantly, right? I think there's 2 ways to do everything, the long way and the wrong way. If you're going to go the wrong way, you're like, your house is too small, or my house is too small. You're like, okay, how big's your house? 1,800 square feet. This one's 2,000. We're going to have a deal here, aren't we? Right? No, I don't know. 2,000 means nothing. So what about your current house? My house is what doesn't work about your house? My house is too small. And you say, okay, tell me more about that. What about your house is too small? Oh, the kitchen's too small. Okay. Can you tell me more about that? What about the kitchen is too small? Or what about the kitchen doesn't work for you? You keep going. And then you get down to the point where someone's like, yeah, you know what? We, when it was just me and the wife or me and the girlfriend or whatever, we used to always go to my family's house for Thanksgiving and Christmas and all these events. Now we got 2 little kids. We don't like packing them up. Everybody comes to our house. But our kitchen layout is so small, we can't interact with people while we're cooking. Some people have to sit in the living room. Some people sit in the dining room. It's not a real family function, but everybody comes here because we don't want to pack the kids, right? Got it. It has nothing to do with the house being too small. It has nothing to do with the kitchen being too small. It has everything to do with the layout of the kitchen and the dining room setup. You can't put a long table or whatever. Does that make sense?
Yeah. 100%.
Now I dug into their current pain. So that's 1, right? And now I'd like to go at least 2. We call 4 2, right? So 4 deep, 2 wide, right? I go, okay, awesome. I can help you with that. Is there anything else? Or sorry, the house that I'm sitting in, right? Let's say the house I'm sitting in has got the same kind of setup where like I know it's not good for that kind of stuff. Be like, okay, you know what? This house is the same kind of kitchen as you have. So all it is a bigger house. It's going to be a bigger problem. Nothing solved, right? Can you tell me a little bit more? What else about your house doesn't work? Look at my little fucking puppy right now. I didn't have one before. I got one now. I would not be interested in a house with a dog run before. Now I'd be very interested in a house with a dog run, right? So backyard's too small. Okay, can you tell me a little bit more about that? What about the backyard is too small? Well, we used to go out there and play, tennis and whatever, bocce ball and all this kind of stuff. And now we just can't do it anymore. Like, okay, tell me more. Why can't you do it anymore? Well, we got a dog and pisses and shits everywhere and we don't clean it up quite quick enough. And we can't enjoy the backyard. Got it. You don't need a bigger backyard. You need a yard with a dog run. Totally different, right? And now what happens is, let's say the house that I'm sitting in, let's say the stairs come off the middle of the deck. You can't put a proper dog run there. You need the stairs to come off the side or 2 sets of stairs, right? I go, this house ain't going to work for you either, times 2. Why would I show them that house? Yeah. Right? So now here's what the problem is with most agents. Hey guys, my sellers are requiring me to sign in safety protocol, whatever fucking bullshit you guys are saying, times 10 other agents that they went to and they said the same thing to send the same list. And then now you've asked no qualifying questions, no pain points whatsoever. And you're going to walk in there and you'll be like, look at this brand new fridge that they just bought. And look at these upgraded cabinets. And ooh, they put new hardwood floors. Don't you love new hardwood floors? Meanwhile, they're looking around the house being like, this house fucking sucks, right? This house solves none of my problems. I don't give a shit about the KitchenAid appliances or the new windows that just got installed. I don't care. The house doesn't fit my needs. Shut the fuck up. You are useless, right? And that's another thing, sorry, that I never got to. Somebody coming into an open house without a real estate agent, they've got 2 thoughts about real estate agents. You want to guess what those thoughts are?
They're not worth it. Not worth the time. They don't really provide that much value.
Perfect. They don't want us or they don't need us. If they're shopping without a realtor, it's because they don't want us or they don't need us in their mind. And by you forcing them to do a sign-in sheet to send them the same email that everyone else is going to send them that they could pull on realtor.com or realtor.ca or whatever else. So they don't even fucking need you for that, right? They could fucking do a map themselves. Not very difficult. And then you're sitting there trying to sell them a house that they don't want. Guess what you just did? You proved them right, right? You really just proved them right because they don't like you and they don't need you and you are wasting their time, right? So that's why we have to look for pain points. So now what happens is by qualifying them and finding out the problems in their current house and the issues of why they want to go through the pain of moving, I now know exactly the house that they need, right? So if I've done my homework properly and I've researched the neighborhood and I know what houses are for sale in the neighborhood, which I think you guys should all do if you're running an open house, hopefully those ones don't have an open house. That'd be the best case scenario. And you'd be like, you know what, guys, I totally understand where you're coming from. You need a kitchen that looks like this. You need a yard with a dog run. You need a blah, 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 whatever it is. Be like, you know what? There's actually 2 houses right down the road that are exactly what you guys are looking for. They don't have an open right now. I'm done here in about an hour. Why don't I book them for, like, you guys go for a coffee or whatever? I'll book them for 6 o'clock tonight. I'll see you there at 6. It's going to be amazing. You're going to love this. How much value is that?
Yeah. A lot more than just showing them around an open house. Exactly.
That they don't want. 99% chance they don't want it. And check this out. If they do want it, how much of a slam dunk am I about to do? I know it's the best house for them. Guys, you told me this, you told me this, this house has all of that. Amazing. Right?
And no other house in the neighborhood has it, or one other does, and it's, it's a different color.
Fuck that house.
Exactly.
Oh, that house ain't got me. Fuck that house. You're buying this house. Right?
Yeah.
So that's the open house strategy. And what happens is digging for pain points, looking for value, all that kind of stuff. But do you see how much more productive that is compared to sign in, let me send you a bunch of emails? And that's what they're teaching you on the internet, just so you know. On YouTube and everywhere I see it, that's all they're teaching about open houses.
Yeah. And I love kind of your thing kind of comes down just that. It's the value. It's what can we as things become more available online, education, I mean, the properties, like information on homes, the photos, it's like, as agents, we have to differentiate ourselves, and really, I think, have to go to work for those clients, right? And I think that's where some people don't feel like value with agents, is because they don't feel like the agents are actually going to work for them. And I love your kind of thing of digging into pain points, because you could figure out exactly what you need to do to kind of work for that client and ultimately earn that business. So exactly. I think that's huge.
Oh, are you there?
That's huge. Yeah. Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Perfect.
So
I love that. I love kind of your way of kind of thinking outside the box and kind of providing value there. So I know we booked here for a few more minutes. And any other tips or tricks you have for new agents? I don't want to take too much of your time. I mean, we talked about kind of mindset. We talked about taking action. We talked about open houses. Any kind of other pieces of advice you wish someone had told you when you got started, or other agents that you kind of coach and train?
Oh, a lot. There's so much. Probably one of the biggest things, and it really saddens me to see how many agents fail, and how many of this exact conversation that I've had with people, where I'm like, because now I've done this with so many agents, right? I'm like, guys, that's a lot harder than you think it is. It's a lot more work than you think it is. And it's a lot different work than you think it is. And then I'll explain the work to them. I'll explain what you have to do, right? Like, it's not selling sunsets. You're not just with buyers and sellers. You got to go dig in the corners. You got to be prospecting all the time. You're mentally going to be fatigued 24/7, all that kind of stuff. Like, I prep people for that. I'm like, yeah, I can do it. I'm going to do it. And they get slapped in the face, right? They get slapped in the fucking face, and then they quit or they burn out or whatever. So if we're talking about new agents, the biggest thing I could probably really for you guys to understand is, no matter, and you probably heard this, but like, I hope this sinks in even a little bit more. No matter how hard you think this is going to be or how difficult it's going to be harder. I can promise you, for 99% of you guys. So that's one. The other one is to stop learning and start taking action. That's like so important, right? Like, sure, set up your systems and all that kind of stuff and do some basic training. But realistically, like, you should be within 1-2 days, you should be out pounding the pavement. And actually, this would be a really good one. Understand that the goal isn't to sell houses. The goal is not to get buyers. The goal is not to get sellers. The goal is to acquire and refine your skills. That's the goal. And if you understand that that is always the goal, you'll never burn out not having buyers and sellers and stuff, because you're always just adding to your tool belt, to your success, to your skills. Like, if you think about the gym, for example, right? Do you work out, Jeff, or? Yeah,
I hit the gym a couple times a week. Yeah.
Okay. Right. So, but when you first started working out, like, let's take bench press for an example, right? Like, you're not benching 225 your first day in the gym. It's not going to happen. Maybe you're benching the bar plus 10 pounds or something, right?
Yep.
So, but through repetitions, like, it's unreasonable to think that you can show up at the gym and go to 225 for reps. Like, you're not going to do it. It's unreasonable. But if you put in effort every day and you focus on your diet and you focus on your lifts and all that kind of stuff in your training, it is unreasonable for you not to bench 225 in 2-3 years. Does that make sense? It would just be impossible for you not to do it. So if we just focus on, we're just going to keep adding reps, right? Is one. And then the other one is, again, thinking back to the gym. Let's talk about our body changing, right? Because this is our business changing. Same thing. You don't go to the gym, well, a lot of us do, but we go to the gym and you get a workout in and then you look in the mirror and you see no changes, right? Maybe a little pump or whatever, but your body didn't change after a workout. It doesn't work that way. Yet we go and we look every time looking for changes, but we know in our mind, if we do this long enough over time with the right repetitions, we know that change is going to happen, even though day to day we'll never see the change, right?
Yep.
But all of a sudden we'll look up in 3 months or 6 months and your whole body has changed. Well, that's exactly how it works with this business, right? So if you're thinking about pick any prospecting activity you want, pick cold calls. I fucking hate cold calls, but let's pick cold calls, right? You're not going to be good your first call. You have no fucking clue what you're doing, right? And then a week later, you're going to be depressed and sad because you still got no results. But what your result was the microscopic change in the way you talk to people, in your tone, in your presentation, and in your reading of how people respond to you, that microscopic change that made you a fraction better this week than last week. And then same thing the week after and the week after. And then all of a sudden it starts to compound. And then you're like, I don't know what happened. One day it just clicked. No, it didn't just click one day. You had microscopic improvements that added up to the tipping point of where you are now good at that activity. Right. So just keep that in mind, guys. Like it's the building of skills that we're after. It's not the deals. The deals will come with your skills.
I love that. Great advice. And like you said, I mean, it's with the building of the skills. And then I think also a level of confidence, right? It's like, I think both those things kind of go hand in hand. It's like the better you get at the skill, the more confident you become, and it kind of, they feed into each other. So I love that advice. So great stuff, man. I just want to say I appreciate you jumping on. I think you got a lot of wisdom for only being in the business for 2.5 years. You know, you can tell that you take a step back and you really digest things and form opinions on them. And I love that. So I've been following you for quite some time. I'm glad we got to connect in Vegas over at EXPCon. And so I'll make sure everyone has your Instagram handle. They can go follow you and check out your stories. And I know you're starting to do some content on YouTube as well. Are you releasing a YouTube channel?
Yep. Yeah, okay. Finally, man, it's YouTube. a journey unknown at this point. So we'll see.
I know. Well, we'll make sure to link. I'll link your Instagram and your YouTube, both in the podcast description and in the YouTube description of this video as well. So appreciate you being on, man. Thank you so much for all the wisdom.
Thank you so much for inviting me. All right.
Thanks, Shawn.
Yeah, take it easy, homie.